Hey friends, welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas. Now, I'm here to help you live the life that you design instead of choosing a life you think you have to settle for. Let these conversations be your guide. All right, before we go ahead and dive in, have you subscribed yet? Just go ahead and take a moment to subscribe to make sure you don't miss another juicy conversation. We would never want that to happen, right? So, all right, next month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And in preparation for that, I am bringing you a conversation that we actually had earlier this year in the rewrite community with our rewrite expert, Kalisha Crone. She's a licensed therapist and founder of Graceful Change Counseling. She serves clients in California and Texas. She's also the author of Soulful Serenity, 50 Prompts for Inner Peace and Self-Discovery. You can find that book on Amazon. Now, the session was originally titled Off the Record, Navigating What We Don't Say. And what Kalisha addresses, I want to be very clear, is not just for journalists. It's really for all of us, especially if you have a high stress career. So why are we talking about this now? So when I was at my lowest, I actually had no idea I was actually at my lowest. I know it sounds crazy, but a therapist was the one who had to tell me like, let me wave the red flag. You are not well. And I had the gall to have a whole attitude about it. I was mad to hear that. And I was like, well, what is normal anyway? Like, I didn't even have a context of what healthy, like mental health even look like, because I had normalized my numbness. I had normalized my exhaustion in other signs that were very clear to her, but were not clear to me. And even from the outside looking in, other people did not know that I was struggling. Look, I didn't even know that I was struggling. Now that I'm on the other side, it sounds crazy. It really, really sounds crazy. So it's really important for me in this community that I'm cultivating when I'm talking to you, that it's important for me to balance the messages of strategy and ambition and, consistency with health and wellness. Right? Because you can't truly embrace your next if you don't address your past and your present. You will just bleed all up into your next. And the place that could bless you might not even be able to bless you because of how you are showing up, right? So we want to go ahead and get things together now so we can be in bliss wherever we are going. Let me let you know. Like sometimes you might be dragged. Like right now, currently in therapy, I am being dragged. It is not fun, but it is necessary. And it is, in fact, overdue. I'm grateful for it. Most days, not all days, but most days I am, when I have perspective, I am grateful for it. Okay, back to the conversation. I'm cutting out parts of this webinar that we had so we could just kind of dive into the meat of the discussion. That includes one of the things I'm cutting out is a conversation that Kalisha had with one of the participants. I still want to kind of keep that a little bit more private for the people who are in the community because this person was just so bold and just brave and courageous to share what they were going through. But if you're in the rewrite community, you have access to the full video. Okay. On top of that, if you check the show description out, there are going to be a number of things there this week. One, a link to the Next Best Thing community, because I think you should be in community with us where you can kind of see how we get down. Very, very honest space where everybody is just working to get to the next level. So there's that. I'm going to put a link to 2 of the grounding exercises that Kalisha does during this webinar. You're not going to hear both of them, but she did 2. They're both less than 3 minutes. They are on YouTube. Really good videos to just bookmark. When somebody gets on your nerves, you might need a little woo-saw, and Kalisha can just guide you through. Close your eyes, less than 3 minutes for a whole woo-saw to get you back to center. We want y'all to stay at your jobs, stay in your relationships so you don't pop off, or as the kids say, crash out. And what else is going to be there? Also, Kalisha's book. that you can get from Amazon. All right. Again, this conversation just pulls back the curtain just ever so slightly. You won't get the full effect, but you'll get a little taste of what we do in our workshops that I facilitate, and that this podcast usually just has conversations, me just with a guest, but our workshops are hands on. Folks who came to this workshop got a handbook, a workbook, and they got to ask questions. There's a free flowing of information. People are very, very honest, which really helps all of us to get something really valuable out of it. I hope you get something very valuable out of this. And again, let me know, as always, what you think, how you feel. Hit me up in the comments or on Instagram at Next Best Thing Pod. All right, let's get into the conversation. Again, that's already in progress with Kalisha. So Kalisha, the title is Navigating What We Don't Say. And so people have been very open in sharing how they're feeling, but there are things that we don't say.
Absolutely.
And what does that actually do to us when we're not sharing?
It's one of those things that doesn't feel dangerous when you're doing it, but it can absolutely have short-term and long-term consequences. So when we're thinking about the impact of not saying something, oftentimes that will lead to emotional suppression and emotional repression. And those can often manifest in subtle but also overt ways. They can affect your well-being, your emotional health, how you engage with your work, how you engage with other people. So I wanted to take some time to explore both of these, both emotional suppression, which is the conscious effort of pushing emotions away, and emotional repression, which I'll get into in just a minute. One of the biggest things that can come up is for emotional suppression is professional detachment as a survival mechanism. So a few examples are brushing off the impact of trauma, minimizing or pretending as if the experience doesn't affect us, pushing past it without honoring ourselves and processing those feelings. Something that resonates with me is overworking and hyperproductivity in an attempt to ignore those feelings or push them, suppress or push them to the side. Many of us will work into exhaustion to prove our worth, as well as avoid dealing with those big emotions that each of us has, mainly because we aren't sure how to handle them or what it will look like to feel them or experience them or really have to face them head on. Something that I've experienced with a few of my clients is cynicism and dark humor. It's that phrase, you got to laugh to keep from crying. And although it can provide a bit of laughter in the moment, that dark part of it is, I think, what really resonates with most of us and can quickly transition us from laughing to feeling right back in that space where we're trying to avoid and run from. Additionally, downplaying our own trauma compared to other sources' experiences. So saying phrases like, well, at least it wasn't as bad as so-and-so. And in a way, it's an attempt to see the silver lining, but it can double as dismissive or avoidant. And so it really, and that one, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I'm curious if any of those resonate, or if anyone wants to share for the professional detachment as a coping mechanism. If any of those resonated, you can maybe come off of mute or maybe type it in the chat if you feel comfortable. It's up to you.
You can come on stage if you want to, if somebody's comfortable enough. One person said, definitely feeling the last two on that list. Joe says, definitely feeling the last two on that list. Cynicism and dark humor. If you've been in a newsroom, that dark humor, all day long.
Yeah.
All day long. All day long.
All right, so let's talk about Emotional repression. So, like I said, there were the two types. There's the emotional suppression, which is the conscious blocking, and then the emotional repression is the unconscious blocking of emotions. So, a few examples. I'll give you the name of it and also give you an example just so you can have a clear idea of what it looks like. So, for memory lapses and disconnection from experiences, one example is a worker who was unfairly blamed and reprimanded for project failure later finds it hard to recall details of that event, even when asked about it. They also struggle to remember key moments from stressful meetings, feeling like they, quote, weren't even there. Another is unexplained anxiety and emotional outburst. So, a manager who previously worked in a toxic environment starts feeling panicked whenever they receive an email from upper management. When a colleague asks a simple question about their project, they suddenly snap, feeling overwhelmed and defensive. Even though this is something that I've put together, hearing it again, it's like, yes, I've either known it, seen it, experienced it. This is very, very real. And I hope that you're able to hold some space for yourself if you notice that some big feelings are coming up. If you do notice any emotional dysregulation or trigger, bring your attention back to your breath. I want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves while we're having these challenging conversations. Another example of emotional repression is physical symptoms or psychosomatic responses. For example, an employee who was bullied by a supervisor in a past job starts getting migraines and stomach aches whenever they have one on one meetings with their new supportive boss, despite there being no real threat. Detachment in personal relationships. So it doesn't just stay at work, it can come in and translate into our personal relationships with family or friends or our romantic partners. After experiencing chronic burnout and mistreatment at work, a person stops engaging emotionally with their partner and friends. When their spouse asks about their day, they respond with vague, disconnected, it's fine, and they change the subject. Dreams and nightmares. One example might be a former employee of high pressure company starts having recurring nightmares of being trapped in an office building, unable to escape. Even though they've left that job, the stress haunts them in their sleep. And lastly, sudden emotional flooding when triggered. A team member who once had a verbally abusive boss suddenly bursts into tears in a meeting when their current kind supervisor raises their voice slightly while speaking. The reaction feels disproportionate, but it stems from past workplace trauma. So when we're thinking about emotional suppression and also emotional repression, there can, like I said earlier, be long-term consequences to this.
And Kalisha, I just wanted to add, that's why especially that last bit of being triggered is
Mm-hmm.
why with the rewrite, a lot of people come and say, hey, do you have, I need to change my resume. Like, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
need to, I just need to go find another job.
Mm-hmm.
But my whole thing is if you don't deal with what the triggers
Yeah.
are, start
Yep.
knowing what your triggers are,
They
you're
will
just
follow.
going to have the same experience someplace else.
Yes. Absolutely.
You could be in a completely different environment that
Mm-hmm.
might be better suited for you even, but you can't fully enjoy it
Right.
because your boss, as you said, your boss says something to you and you make them your old boss because
Mm-hmm.
of maybe the words that or I've heard people who have new jobs now and they get feedback and then they're like, man, I'm terrible, I'm no good at this. And I was like, you just got the job a month ago. They're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
helping you learn. This is actually a gentler environment where you're learning. But when criticism was lodged before, it
Mm-hmm.
was lodged to kind of in a way that broke you down. But
Right.
you're receiving the feedback now, and it's to build you up, and it's hard to discern the difference.
Right.
Um,
Right.
okay, so we've got some questions here. Can you
Mm-hmm.
reverse emotional repression? If so, how?
Sorry, you said, can you reverse?
Yeah, emotional
Let me
repression.
see it. Yes, so that's what we'll get into toward the end of this time together. I want to make sure that we are Andrea and I, it was really important for us to give everyone some tangible tools that you all can take with you at the end of our time together. For example, though, going to therapy, participating in groups of not just therapy groups, but peer support like this one. It's offering you a space to share those feelings, to share experiences, because even if you can't name the feeling right away, you can name the triggering experience that happened. And maybe if you're not in therapy, but you're in a supportive group, you can share that experience with someone who has also been there, and they might identify, like, hey, this is how I dealt with that. So things like therapy, supportive groups, journaling about your feelings when it happens, so that you're not continuing to hold them in and continuing this pattern of silencing yourself, because that's often something that will happen in workplaces anyway, until we have this change that we're all, rooting and hoping for. But oftentimes we're silenced in the workplace, and we take those patterns with us wherever we go. So choosing not to be silent, especially when it's imposed on yourself or you're doing it to yourself. So for long-term consequences, things like burnout or compassion fatigue, that's when chronic suppression and repression can make it impossible to feel motivated or connected to work, leading to emotional exhaustion. Another long-term consequence that isn't exclusive for journalists or storytellers, but many people who experience chronic stress or a high-demand job with minimal acknowledgement of what people might need. But they might practice emotional suppression by turning to alcohol or drugs or other high-risk behaviors to manage the emotions that they've been suppressing for years. Dissociation and emotional numbness. Over time, someone with high stress or a high demand job might feel entirely disconnected from their own emotions. And that would make it really hard, almost a chronic struggle, to experience joy or fulfillment in life. And lastly, depression and anxiety disorders. Repressed trauma often leads to chronic mental health struggles, especially if left unaddressed. So things like PTSD can develop over time if it's unaddressed for some time. Generalized anxiety disorder. So what we were talking about, being maybe anxious about just going to work, pulling up to work, and you're already feeling anxious. So just this general pervasive anxiety or depression and hopelessness and lack of optimism going into work. We might think that we're just kind of pushing through, but we're paying quite a cost for that.
That's the thing, the pushing through part. And then I was the numbness, where people
Mhm.
go into therapy. How do you feel? I don't feel anything, actually.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's why it was really hard when people asked me, what do I want? And I was like, I just want to take a nap. Like that's as good as it got. I
Yeah.
just want to take a nap. I'm really exhausted right now. And we can skip, because everybody is like very chatty actually in the chat right now.
Yeah.
And so let's skip the next question, because they're kind of already answering it, and invite somebody to come on stage.
Sure.
Yeah, if we can invite somebody. So if you would like to come on stage, just go ahead and indicate it in the chat. And we can go ahead and have you speak to Kalisha. I do want to highlight some things that we're seeing. We're seeing so much. I'm not going to get to all of them. Thank you so much for sharing. I detach because I feel like I can't do anything beyond focusing on work when I'm
Mhm.
behind, but I just end up neither working nor interacting, balancing my life, attending to the rest of my life.
Mhm.
Um, After a run of difficult coverage, I snap at my family easily, parents and siblings. And it's hard because they don't really understand like the stress or really everything that you've seen for the day. It's like you haven't told the viewers everything that you've seen for the day, but you just kind of like hold it in. It's hard for people to understand. Um, and is it harmful in the long run to do all this work to heal our triggers and continue working in American newsrooms? Are we gaslighting ourselves? Is the only option to leave the industry? So I guess, can you heal in the places that harmed you?
You know, that's a big one because I know that many of you didn't get into, many of the journalists here didn't get into this industry to be triggered or gaslit. But there are moments where you can find a space where it may not be as triggering or you have support within your newsroom community. However, if you have tried all of those things and you notice that there's a theme that in the places that you occupy or the newsrooms where you are stationed, if those are no longer serving you, that is a question that you and you alone would be able to answer. I would love to be able to give you like, yes, this is how you do it. That's not how you do it. But you're the one who is in those spaces. You know, how are you feeling entering these spaces every day? Do you feel empowered? Do you feel motivated? Do you feel that someone cares about you in this space in a way that isn't caring about how much you produce and how productive you are, but actually caring about your mental wellness and your well-being? I know that not just in the journalism industry, but across industries, that's not always a norm. And that's something that we as people who are in different industries, people who are mental health workers or healers or storytellers have to continue to advocate for. I know that it's a big system and I know that it may feel impossible sometimes, but if that's something that you're continuing to face, no matter what space you're occupying, it may not be the easiest decision to make, but you have to prioritize what you need. And that may look different from 5 years ago than it does today.
If you all have never been to therapy before, you kind of saw a little bit about experience and how it could just help you having an outside eyes and ears, how that can really help you kind of reframe your story. That's why we call it the rewrite, because it is about rewriting and reframing your story. So how can we kind of go about doing that and talking about the tangible tips people can take away?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few. It's this idea that you mentioned, Andrea, of going from coping to healing. So I wanted to make sure, and this was something that we agreed on, that we give some tangible tools as a takeaway from today's session. Sarah mentioned this belief that I've heard from many of my clients as well, is that I don't really have the time to do the things that I might need to do for myself. I think often when we think about self-care or self-compassion, we think of these grand gestures of, well, I'm just going to take myself away on a getaway, or I'm going to buy all the things that I want to buy. But in reality, when we're feeling emotionally dysregulated, sometimes we just need just a few minutes, whatever we can realistically afford ourselves. If we have a lot of stuff to do at home or at work, we deserve more than the 3 to 4 minutes, but we deserve at least a little bit of a reset. So I want to give you some ideas that you can use just throughout your day, something that you can use regularly. So not just when you're feeling overwhelmed or emotionally dysregulated, but also when you're feeling calm, so that your brain can normalize these strategies and recall them when you are feeling stressed or you are feeling overwhelmed. So something like walking or practicing grounding strategies. Even short bursts of 3 to 4 minutes of walking per day is proven to have a positive impact on the brain and the body. So for example, it can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So it helps shift, like I said earlier about the fight or flight response or freeze response, it can help shift us to a calmer state and also reduce those physiological signs of anxiety, like a rapid heart rate or muscle tension. Walking can do things like reset your cognitive function, especially if you're stepping away from a screen or a stressor. My practice is 100% telehealth. And so in between my sessions, I try to schedule time to walk outside, get some water, feel the ground under my feet so I'm not constantly staring at a screen all day. It can also improve problem solving and emotional regulation. It can boost your mood. It can improve breath awareness and release tension. So natural movements encourage deeper breathing and reduce shallow stress-induced breathing patterns. I'm not sure if you've ever really paid attention, but if you notice when you're stressed, you often just take sips of air. So you're just kind of taking in enough air to not pass out or to allow your body to function just enough. So if you've ever taken a yoga class or a Pilates class, or have had a really, or even like a thoughtful meditation, one of those things that we'll practice is taking really intentional deep breaths like we did at the beginning of our session. And I remember noting that a few of our participants did feel at least, a tiny bit better. Other ways are practicing grounding strategies. So grounding strategies are ways to keep us in the present moment. Oftentimes for my clients who have some sort of anxiety symptoms or are kind of in this thought loop or ruminating about something, that signals to me that there's a disconnect between our brain and our body. And so a grounding strategy engages all 5 of our senses. So usually it's 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And doing grounding strategies like that can help disengage from intrusive thoughts and overwhelming emotions. Something else that is all over social media now is cortisol. And deep breathing or practicing grounding strategies can lower cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and reduce stress in general. So tactile things like holding an object, drinking cold water, touching grass or a fabric, feeling the ground underfoot provides a sense of stability. Supporting emotional regulation. It can help manage panic attacks or flashbacks and spiraling thoughts that can offer you a mental reset. And a lot of these things are things that you can do throughout the day. They don't require you to completely disengage from all of your responsibilities. Something that I've done several times and on my way to work at previous jobs is taking deep breaths while I'm in the car, having that reset before I even get into work so that I'm being proactive with how I'm caring about myself that day. Grounding strategies also offer a sense of control and bodily awareness, which is particularly useful for anxiety or dissociation. So if you're zoning out and you notice that sometimes you're not, your physical body is there, but emotionally or mentally you're somewhere else. And also it can strengthen the mind-body connection for trauma responses. So these small intentional habits can have significant, huge shifts. So 3 to 4 minutes of body movement or grounding can interrupt stress cycles, reset focus, and improve overall well-being. I know that we are getting close to time, so I want to make sure to honor everyone's time here today. But I did want to do a collective closing breath toward the end of this time. Andrea?
Yes. No, you can go ahead. You go ahead and handing over the mic. You go ahead.
Okay. So if you're ready, I know that there have been some stories shared today. There have been maybe big feelings that you experienced. And again, I'm so proud of everyone. I may not know you, I may not have been able to see your face, but I have so much gratitude for how you showed up in this space today. The chat is filled with encouragement and curiosity, really holding to the group norms that we had established earlier. So as we close, let's just take a moment to reset. This exercise will help us ground ourselves after today's discussion. So, wherever you are, find a comfortable position. You can sit tall with your feet flat on the floor, hands resting gently in your lap. Take a slow inhale through your nose, counting to 4, and feel your belly expand. Hold the breath, count to 4, let the air settle inside you. Exhale slowly through your mouth, counting to 6. Release tension with your breath. Hold and pause just before your next inhale. And let's repeat this 2 more times. Inhale through your nose, counting to 4. Let the air settle in your body. And exhale, counting to 6. One more time, all together. Inhale. Hold. And exhale slowly through your mouth. I'm so grateful for all of your engagement and your curiosity today. You all, thank you so much.
Isn't she so good? I still think about that, and listening to it again, it reminded me of some of the things that I need to work on. Maybe it had that same impact on you. All right. So again, check the show description. 2 grounding exercises that Kalisha facilitated. I've clipped them separately, less than 3 minutes. Bookmark them when you need to get back to center. Also, there's a link in the show description to join the Next Best Thing community, where we have workshops like this every single month with different experts coming to teach different things. But again, it's just all of us trying to level up together, to be well together, so we can enjoy what is next, what is in store for us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll chat again really soon. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing with Andrea Cline-Thomas, a Mountain Court Media production. The music was written, recorded, and produced by Gavin Casey, also known as Dark Purple. Now, if you like what you heard, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and write a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share it with friends. And I hope this episode helps you on your journey. See you next time.